John F. Kennedy, First Lady Jackie Kennedy, and Marilyn Monroe were bona fide cultural icons. During their time in the spotlight, they symbolized the class, glamour, and progressiveness of mid-century America. But when we look at the reality of the first couple's marriage, as well as Marilyn's doomed entanglement with the president, we can come away with many important lessons about pop culture as a whole. Today on Culture Counter, we're doing a deep dive on President Kennedy's affair with Marilyn Monroe, so grab a seat and enjoy the poison. John and Jackie Kennedy were considerably younger than prior first couples. With the recent popularization of magazines and television in the late 50s, they enjoyed a style of fame more common among celebrities and movie stars than politicians. They even had a direct impact on long-term fashion trends. For example, wearing a hat used to be a staple of men's fashion, until JFK's historic inauguration, when everyone decided that a good haircut is worth showing off. Likewise, Jackie Kennedy popularized some colorful, yet classy fashion styles that are still replicated to this day. Altogether, the first family exuded an almost fairy tale-like image. Jackie Kennedy, being well aware of this, actually likened their version of the White House to Camelot. However, much like American society at the time, things weren't as cheery as they appeared on the surface. Marilyn Monroe was an influential pop culture phenomenon in her own right. A figurehead of Hollywood's golden age, she embodied a sort of progressive and free-spirited foil to Jackie's more aristocratic style. From 1961 to 1962, the president allegedly had an affair with Monroe, and Jackie was none too pleased about it. The story goes that JFK met Marilyn at a birthday party for actor Bing Crosby. The two hooked up that very evening. Interestingly, this was 2 months prior to her infamous "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" routine. That made their affair just comically obvious. However, Jackie had known of some of her husband's prior indiscretions, and had even acknowledged his womanizing tendencies in a letter from before their marriage. That said, she was infuriated by this affair. In Jackie's eyes, Marilyn was a loose cannon, who was liable to go public with the relationship and cause much embarrassment to the first family. This concern was strengthened when Marilyn allegedly dialed Jackie at the White House, just to flat out brag about sleeping with her husband. So Marilyn certainly wasn't the president's only mistress, and JFK was definitely not the first politician to be unfaithful to their spouse. Unfortunately, the controversy doesn't end there. It is also rumored that Robert Kennedy was having an affair with Marilyn as well. Robert, who was JFK's younger brother and the Attorney General of the United States, allegedly began a relationship with her when the president had gotten sick of her. But this was short-lived, because in the following summer, Monroe tragically took her own life. This is where things get a little dark, because considering the power of these two men, it is often rumored that they may have played a part in her death in order to preserve the image of the administration. Thankfully, rumors to that effect have been discredited. Even the biographers who have written about these affairs say that there's just no evidence of it. The worst the Kennedy brothers could be accused of, other than the infidelity, is covering up their involvement with her, as it took years for these affairs to come to light. What is tragic, though, is what this sequence of events reveals about some of these beloved figures. What looked like an idyllic, fairy tale marriage was in fact a bunch of one-sided infidelity, where Jackie had no choice but to place the reputation of her husband and his brother above her own feelings. Likewise, it reveals that this beloved cultural figure, Marilyn Monroe, who seemed to exude glamour and happiness, was secretly a deeply troubled person who had little recourse when her fame and lifestyle became too much to bear. Indeed, the 1960s were a fascinating time in American history. Though the entire decade has been glamorized in many ways, people often see the early 60s as embodying the so-called American dream, in contrast to the latter half of the decade, which showcased many of the USA's moral failings. But what we've now learned is that the lovely images from those early years weren't always telling the whole truth. It's almost poetic in a way that all these people would end up meeting tragic fates that were both horrible and eternally mysterious. As with any of these old bits of gossip and conspiracies, we will never know the whole story, but they still say a lot about what we value in our culture. Don't forget to like and subscribe for some more pop culture poison every week.